View from the Gutters, episode 103. Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book. On this episode, we discuss The Wicked and the Divine, and to skip ahead to the recommendation section, skip to 120.42. Alright, episode 103. I'm Andrew Chard.
I'm Tobiah Panshin.
Brant Gillihan-Eddy.
And I'm Kayleigh Fleeman.
We've been talking about cosmic rays for the last half hour. We've not. I'm lying.
We should have been.
We are talking about, today, The Wicked and the Divine.
Yeah.
On Toby's recommendation.
It was.
So Toby.
Yes.
Did you happen to reread this week?
I did, in fact.
Did you
happen to reread this?
What did you think about this book on the reread?
I liked it. I was a little upset because I realized that the copy that I had just bought and promptly lost the receipt for had like a little section where there was like a little tear on the edge of the page.
Oh my God.
For like 10 or 12 pages.
I saw that. I looked down because I was like reading it.
I loaned my copy to Kayleigh.
Yeah. And I was just like, oh my God, did I do that? I was like, no, I didn't do that. I just brought it here. I couldn't have done that. And then there was like this moment. It's like, no, that was probably there. That would have been an impressive feat for me to do that between putting it in my backpack and taking it out of my backpack, and that happening in the 2 seconds where it was not in my backpack.
Kayleigh, you are known for impressive feats. So,
well,
it could have
yeah.
happened. My copy, which I promptly re-downloaded from thehumblebundle.com, was in perfect condition.
Mine too. I chose to download mine in the CBZ vintage, even though I had the option of downloading it in 3 other flavors.
Yeah, so
I haven't decided yet if I'm going to try and go to the store and exchange it without a receipt, because it's always a tricky proposition. But in any case, I really enjoyed the book having reread it, and I want to start by talking about the art this week, because
Hiroja did send in a question.
Jamie McKelvie's art never ceases to blow my mind.
So does anybody else see his art and think of Steve Dillon?
Yeah, I can see that.
Not 100%. I'm just saying, like, I had this strong
it's like
sense
a
of it.
better Steve Dillon.
Well, I don't know about that.
In my head, it's like I don't know if better is the right word, but like cleaner and more modern Steve Dillon is what I would call it.
Yeah, interesting. I have a bunch of Steve Dillon's newer stuff that he's done for Marvel, like Bullseye's Greatest Hits, which I think with the colorist he was using was a little bit cleaner, and that's where I felt like really strong. Because I was like, at first I was like, is this the same person who did Preacher? Because I couldn't remember Dillon's name.
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, it's not. And then I looked up Preacher, and I kind of put it all together, and I was like, wow. And then I happened to have my Bullseye like sitting out because I was going to bring it at one point for a recommendation. And I was just like, wow, like it's not dead on. And I wouldn't even claim that McKelvie's like trying to copy him or anything like that. But I was just, it's such a kind of a more, it has certainly more of a signature sense to it than I think other artists have, if that makes sense. I don't know how to explain what I'm thinking, but... I like it. I do like it. But.
To me, it's like, this is going to sound really bad, but it's so clean, it's so precise that it's very forgettable. Like,
see, I have the exact opposite reaction. Like, clean and precise line work is the thing that I love.
It looks like photos. It's not art at that point where it's just like, it looks like real life.
Well, no, I mean, it doesn't look like real life.
It does there are moments in this book that I find to be amazingly impactful, and they have 0 to do with the line work and 100% to do with the colors.
And I absolutely love the colors in this book, and I wanted to remember what the colorist's name was, and I can't, and Kayleigh has my copy on the other side of the room, so I can't tell you what it is.
Well, she can't possibly look it up in the meantime.
But holy crap, like,
when that
the
guy's
colors
on fire,
this book.
That's my favorite panel, is when the cop's on fire and it's like green fire.
Matthew Wilson.
Brilliant.
I swear we've talked about things that he's done before.
It's possible.
I might be confusing him with Matt Hollingsworth, though.
I don't know.
But in any case, like, just how vivid and, like, super pastel the colors are. And some of the, the designs that McKelvie does and the way that they work with the colors, like Woden and his, like, very obviously Daft Punk-inspired costume. And, like, the way that his Valkyries look, and they're all, like, troned out.
Yeah.
Like, just That's my jam right there. Like, I could just flip through the pictures of this book with no words and get 90% of the enjoyment that I got out of it.
I think my favorite character design was the Morrigan. Like just the way that like her
Blade Runner ass eye makeup.
Yes.
It's so fantastic. God, I love it. And maybe that was obvious, it being me, but God damn it, she's
I'm
so
surprised
cool.
you don't wear Blade Runner eye makeup every day.
It's because I have to work.
And Amaratsu's like eye bedazzling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everything about it is great. And I wanted to say this specifically because I've been following McKelvie since he did Phonogram. Mm-hmm. As an artist, for me, he's had 3 problems. Mm-hmm. And he's been getting better and better at all of these things as he goes along. Like, if you look at his early work, he has some problems, I think, with faces. And I'm referring specifically in Phonogram to his drawing of Elton John, which looks nothing like Elton John. And he's gotten a lot better at that. His drawings used to have a lot of stiffness to them. Mm-hmm. Like, he had weird problems depicting dramatic action. Mm-hmm. And he's gotten better on that. And it was really obvious in Young Avengers that he had been getting on better at that. And I think it comes across here. And the last thing is like awkward poses. And it's something that I think he shares with Mike Allred. Because both of them, like, you'll see these random panels and there'll be a character that's just kind of like at a weird angle to everybody else on the page. And like, I get that they're trying to do a perspective thing, but it never quite seemed to work. And it's something I used to notice in his work often. And there is exactly one panel in this where I noticed that and nowhere else. And like, it makes me super excited to read his stuff because I can see him getting better with every book that he does. And I'm like, I can't wait to see what he's doing in another 3 and 5 years.
Yeah, to me, this is like, this is going to be an opposite for me because I don't really like this book that much. And the main reason why, in a lot of ways, is I'll go over why I don't like the story. But first, I'll start with the art. It's like, it's a less static Luna Brothers. And like, I like the Luna Brothers, but like, one of the problems I have with the book is it's too simplistic. And the colors do most of the work for the line work. Like, if I were to just look at the pencils for this book, it's the majority of the page is white space. And I don't know that that's necessarily a negative, but it's part of the reason I'm not a huge fan of thin, like, very flat art is because I like detail. I like there to be like a crazy amount of detail like on a character's clothing. And I like the way they dress, and the gods dress really cool, but the side and the main character, she is really cool, but like a lot of the side characters are just wearing like t-shirts and stuff. And the clothing is something that they focus on, but like there's no like wrinkles in their skin. There's no like I don't know. I feel
texture.
Like there's no texture to anything. That's exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. It's like everything is so flat.
Yeah, I love that aesthetic.
It's it reminds me of pop art a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, clearly there's influence there because
right.
there's like this different things where I was just noticing it where they do like the what do you call that? Where it's like the little polka dot, like the dark red polka dots on the light red.
Oh, the halftone.
Yeah.
Halftone.
And I like super detailed art. Like some of the art that's crazy to me is like Jeff Darrow, where it's like, God, how long has he been drawing on that page? It's like 10 years he's been drawing that single like that's what it feels like to me, you know. And guys like James Stokoe, where it's just like there's like folds in their skin and you can see all the wrinkles everywhere and like everything is beat up and kind of crazy. And some of the artists for profit, same kind of deal, where it's just like you feel like you're part of the world because it's very textured. Mobius is like that, like Frank Quitely, like all that stuff. Like I like to see the textures and feel the wrinkles and stuff. It like puts me in the world a lot better, where this is like there's so little information in the panels that I can easily ignore most of what's happening. That I'm just like, and the panel has got a person in it, and the person has what kind of clothes they have on? I don't know, because it's just flat. Like, what kind of texture is that couch? Don't know, it's flat. What kind of texture is the wall? Don't know, flat. Like, everything is flat and kind of like, lifeless.
I consider it in some ways to be the illustration equivalent of pixel art in games. Like, there's a sparseness of detail because it's supposed to be drawing you in.
Yeah.
And like you're supposed to be filling in the details yourself.
Yeah, like, there's a couple of scenes, like right now I'm looking at when the cop is consumed by like hellfire.
Yeah.
I'm glad that that's not incredibly detailed because the colors, like even though they're flat, there's not a lot of shading or extra detail to them. It really draws you in and really makes you like not experience that moment, but see this moment in this very otherworldly sort of sense where you have gods who are consuming people with hellfire.
To me, it's like what I like about that panel is the color choices and the palette, but like I don't sense any of the horror of that scene in the case that like there's a guy on fire. And I also don't sense any of the magic of that scene because there's a guy on fire, but like it doesn't feel... I don't know. It's not like Constantine gritty magic, and it's not like cool high world, like really polished high magic.
Yeah,
like
I mean, I get what you're
fantasy.
saying. I kind of like the fact that it's not like pew pew lasers, like magic lasers magic, where it's just like they snap their finger and a thing happens.
Yeah,
and like there's no like poetry or like highfalutin like rituals or magic words. Like they're just doing
counting.
things.
They count a lot.
They do count. That's true.
I'm trying.
To me, though, it's like... So I'm imagining this on film. And the reason I do that is because I think about a lot of how magic and special effects relate. Where it's like, it's a lot more difficult to show magic flying out of someone's fingers and like electrocuting a guy, and you can see his like skeleton as he's getting electrocuted or whatever, versus just snapping and then quick cutting to a guy's head exploding. And so I feel like there's less work involved in the magic in this book, and that it's not well developed.
Have you ever seen Scanners?
Yeah, exactly. Right?
Have you seen the weird documentary thing that or the video about how they made that head explode thing? So sometimes a quick cut to somebody's head exploding can be pretty dramatic.
I mean, it's tough. It's difficult, but it's why it's the reason that they're able to make movies like Scanners and Friday the 13th for like on a small budget,
right?
Because those movies are much lower budget than something like Return of the Jedi, which has like all of this special effects in it and stuff. Because it was, and those are both 80s movies, and I'm trying to pick like similarly high budget effects showcases in the 80s, but
The Last Dragon, which is a reference that I hope somebody out there gets.
You want to see like the perfect movie for as far as practical effect work?
Yeah,
the 80s. Aliens.
Yeah,
you could still watch that movie and be like, "Hot damn!"
I agree.
There's a bunch of aliens eating people. Holy shit!
Yeah, and I don't know. It feels like I'm waiting for the rest of the story to happen. I'm like, where is the story in this?
Yeah.
Because their magic is so underdeveloped, their mythos is so underdeveloped, the characters are so underdeveloped that I only like exactly one issue in this trade, which is the last one in which everything happens.
Well, let's move over to talking about the writing, because I feel like I share a lot of the concerns you have. Mm-hmm. And I feel like at this point, this is an issue that I have with Kieron Gillen's writing. Mm-hmm. Because like his Kid Loki run on Journey into Mystery was awesome. Fucking incredible.
It was awesome.
Like it was so good. But with a lot of the rest of his writing, and I'm thinking specifically here about Phonogram to an extent, but also his Young Avengers run and this, like he gets very, very in love with a specific idea or a concept that he wants to portray. And he gets so involved with pushing that concept that he forgets that he also has to tell a compelling and interesting story.
Yeah.
And like with Young Avengers, it was the fact that he loved the character of Wiccan and he wanted Wiccan to be a big deal. And so he wanted to write an entire series about how Wiccan is a big deal so that he would be an important character. And nothing fucking happens in that book. Yeah,
and it's also just like so mired by the fact that it is the continuation of his Young Loki run. Right. It's like Wiccan and what is the Hulkling? Yeah, Wiccan and Hulkling and Kid Loki and America Chavez are like kind of the only characters in that book. Like Kate Bishop is Cookie Cutter. Like he forgot the Patriot was in that book. Like there's a lot of stuff going on outside of the couple characters that he likes that like the majority of the rest seems like a dull background. Right. And the thing that he's doing in this work that he was also doing in Phonogram is creating
like a mythos around this idea of pop culture and especially pop music as magic and mythology. That the reason that these gods are counting and snapping their fingers is because it's a pop music reference.
Yeah.
Like they're explicit, like they're pop stars. They exist for a very brief period and then they die.
Right.
What pop stars are walking around snapping their fingers these days?
I don't fucking
All of them.
Would
At
have
least
made
I
more
hope
sense if it was
so.
the 50s.
Yeah.
But they're counting out a beat.
Right.
And he's like, obviously considers this idea very important, very meaningful to him. And he's really pushing this idea and this metaphor in the story. But it seems like this idea is so important to him that he's not taking the time to tell an interesting and compelling story aside from the meta text.
Right.
And I feel like, I guess part of it for me is, what is the story? Like, like, if you feel like there's a story, what story is it? Like, for me, it certainly seemed up until that last issue that Lucifer was basically the primary.
Right. And who did it? It was kind of a whodunit
Right.
kind of
And
deal,
that,
right?
yeah, and that's already kind of been like, well, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
And you're like, wait, what? But I mean, there's some cliffhanger-y type stuff there at the end that implies that maybe it isn't as clean as it was resolved. But it's funny, I read this, I got really into it, so like I found that I read it very quickly because I was like, I find this interesting. But the longer I walk away from it, the more I'm just kind of like, well, like I'm noticing, now that I'm getting distance, I'm seeing the holes in it that really kind of make me be like, this is going to be the difference between good or bad. Now, apparently, what I read earlier today was that this is intended to be a fixed run, so 20 to 30 issues only. So I'm hoping that maybe that will give him if he keeps going all the way and finishes it up, that
I think
the narrative will strengthen itself or stay intact, I guess. I don't know.
I think my issue with it was reading it in a trade. And like, as I was kind of reading through the first 3 issues in this trade, I was just like, I should have read these in issues. Like,
Really?
yeah, with time between them. They're very episodic and they focus on one god at a time and then they come together.
Yeah.
And, like, because that's what you were saying with the last issue. That's when everything happens. It's because they've introduced all their characters and a little bit about the mythology. And that was like the prologue. And like, okay, now we can move forward. So reading it in a trade is like, God, nothing happened. Like, I don't feel like I know these characters well. I don't feel like any sort of story was resolved. And then I was like, maybe that's not fair. Because it either needs to be one whole collected work or it needs to be a whole bunch of little works. Like, and you can't read it in like bite-sized trades.
And I think that was my problem reading it in individual issues to begin with, was each issue didn't feel like a meal in and of itself. I didn't feel like I was getting a complete story. I felt like I was getting a little piece that wasn't satisfying on its own. And then I had to wait until the next month and get another piece that wasn't quite satisfying on its own.
Yeah.
And I liked it more reading it in the trade because I feel like I absorbed an entire story. It's only the beginning of a story, but it at least felt like an arc with a beginning, a middle, and an end.
For me, it was like, I felt the same way that you did reading in singles, where I was like, and not enough. Like, I need more per week. And then a month would go by and I would be like, oh yeah, this thing that I'm sort of reading. And then I would read it and I'd be like, that's still like, I still don't feel like I'm getting enough. I felt the exact same way reading it in the trade, just on a larger scale, where it's like, I'm getting more, but it's still not enough. Like, this is a series that I think I will sit down and read from beginning to end, all 5 or however many trades there are, in 1 or 2 days, and go, okay, now I've seen the whole story. Like, it's something I want to consume as a whole. And not piecemeal. There's some things that I can enjoy reading piecemeal. Like Saga, I love reading week to week. I love reading trade to trade. And I'll love reading the whole thing. But there's some books where, like, if I don't read all of it, I don't enjoy it as much.
That's how I feel about Fables and 100 Bullets.
Yeah, exactly.
I preferred to read them trade by trade because I wasn't interested in wading through the episodic end. I wanted that arc.
Yeah.
That's how the stories felt more contiguous to me. Yeah, I don't know. Part of it is, and I think there's some visual cue stuff that's at play that I'm trying to. I was running with a theory earlier today, but I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. I'm almost positive I'm wrong now, but originally I was wondering if maybe it isn't the same 12 gods who come back every time, because the symbols are different in the 20s than the now. But I think they're just stylized differently. But they're the same gods, the same 12.
Well, they
because I couldn't remember, or I couldn't seem to find a place where it was explicitly stated that these, because they all make comments about coming back.
Yeah,
but they didn't necessarily ever state explicitly that it was always these same 12. Plus, there's 2 spots missing.
Right, those characters haven't been revealed yet.
Right.
I'm trying.
But they say a couple of times, like I think Ball says at one point, like, I get 2 years and then I don't even know if I get to come back the next time.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Yeah,
okay.
and it's different iterations of himself. And he says, oh, here it is. He says, I'm not Baal Haman, I'm Baal Hadad. And he said, yeah, they're both sky gods. One of them had a much bigger line in having kids roasted.
I think he's just saying that he's a different, like, Baal Haman and Baal Hadad are different gods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and I guess that's the thing.
But I'm like, I think that I think they represent the same thing. So maybe Lucifer will sometimes come back as Hades or some other sort of trickstery liar
I guess
underworld.
That's not explicit at this point. Yeah. So that's what I was kind of curious about. Right, like, that has some potential.
My sense is that different ones come at different times, and some might come more than once in a row, and others might not.
Right. Well, I guess I think that's some of the stuff that Andrew was saying before about, like, the magic making sense, or like the mythos making sense, like, because at this point I'm both, like, enchanted at some of the gods he picked, and then also just kind of like, congratulations, like, you picked up every myth book you could find and found like a handful of really kind of not super obscure but relatively obscure mythic figures.
Yeah, like Lucifer.
Yeah, well, yeah. But I mean, like Woden and Amaterasu's not necessarily particularly, I mean, depending on what you read.
Depending on what you know, like, all of these could be obscure.
Right, yes, or
none.
Right, well, as opposed to being like, it's Zeus, and it's,
Yeah, I suppose
Thor, and whatever. So, and so it's like, but it's like they're clearly multicultural, they're clearly whatever, and it's like, and then there's like weird comments, like at one point they're saying, when Lucifer's being attacked, to go down to where the Morrigan is, like, go down to where the Morrigan is below, because it's, quote, her territory. So that implies that if you're where they normally reside or hang out or something, that they might be more powerful or less powerful. I took that comment to mean like some indicative hint. It's almost like, here's what this is not a very PC term, and I know some of you out there don't care about that phrase, but I'm going to preface it anyway. It's kind of like a weird cock tease version of writing, where it's like, I'm not going to give you the rules right away. I'm going to drop little breadcrumbs double entendre, breadcrumbs throughout the narrative, and then you can kind of piece it together. And sometimes I think that there are writers or stories where that works really well. I think that you're expected to take so much on faith about this series, like, at the point that you're already being told, like, they're gods and they're incarnate and there's all these things, it's like, maybe you could give me a little more structure.
Well, and
so
they're
that I'm
not
feeling
gods. That's, I mean, like,
they sort of are.
But are they? Like, they have specific power sets, right? But they're not immortal, right? Just
not in the classical definition of
right. And so, like, the back of every book reads like, just because you're immortal doesn't mean you live forever. I'm like, I think that kind of is what that means. But they're playing with the idea of, like, what do powers mean? And what does godliness mean? And like, they're playing with these ideas at the same time as they're telling you something else. And that's the real disjointed part I feel about this, is it's like, they're not gods, but they do have powers, but they're immortal, but they don't live forever. And it's like, which ones are they? You
have a mortal person, because, I mean, these are all teenagers.
Right.
Who then become invested with this identity of this god. I mean, like I said, like, this is a very strong metaphor about music and celebrity, and this idea of, you are a person, but then you also become this character who is immortal, like Kurt Cobain is immortal, or like Jimi Hendrix is immortal, and you're gonna die, and you're gonna die young, but this character that is you is going to continue on.
Right.
And so it's like, yeah, Lucifer's dead, but Lucifer, the character, is still alive and may come back one day and would presumably remember the things that happened here.
Yeah, that's not immediately clear either.
And no, it's not. It's not immediately clear, but it's again like it seems like Gillen is more invested in selling this idea and the metaphor that he's crafting than actually telling like, this is a story where these things are happening and this is how this works and these are what these people are and this is what they're doing and how they're doing it. And I definitely I agree. I want more of that out of him. It's what worked in his Kid Loki run when he was talking about like, this is gods are stories. If you change the story, you change the god. Like you can do all of these different things. You can play with reality in these ways. Like at one point he beats another god by opening the book where his story is written down and writing shit in it that retroactively becomes part of that guy's past. And like it works really well because he's actually making explicit statements about what this shit is and how it works.
Exactly. And
he's not doing that here.
Early in that run, he goes back. Does he go back in time? He goes forward in time. Anyway, old Loki walks out of a panel in one of the early. It's like an old man Loki walks out of a panel he goes back in time into young Thor's history.
That is in Thor God of Thunder. That is later.
Is it?
Pretty sure.
I thought that was in the Journey into Mystery run. But I mean, he's playing with those same kind of ideas.
Absolutely.
Where, if you're changing the past, you will. It's a narrative. Things are linear.
Right.
And that is not how we actually perceive time. I mean, it's how we perceive time, but it may or may not be how time actually works. But for the sake of story and time, they're woven together. They're not they cannot be separated, I guess is what I'm trying to say there. He plays with a lot of those. He doesn't like that, but it's because he has rules that series works.
Right.
And I don't know. I think that because there is not really a clear definition of how do these gods work, what are they, what can they do and not do, it leaves me going and the whole time. I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop and him to go, this is actually what's happening, because it's clear that everyone's being lied to.
In some way,
yeah.
The
woman,
the full truth is not being told.
Even the gods don't know the whole story. Because she's go see this old woman. She'll tell you. And then
Anaka.
Yeah. And that old woman is Anaka is clearly hiding things from people.
Right. And one of the things that's unclear is she one of the 12 or not?
Right.
I believe she's not. Because she's there after.
Says she's not.
Well, she says she's not part of the Pantheon.
Right.
But is she one of the 12? Because those two terms are used, and it's not immediately clear. It's this is, and I guess this is my thing. When you're talking, what I realize is, if there was a stronger core narrative, you could breadcrumb more things out because I'd have something else to hang my hat on, to kind of bide my time. But because this girl's journey to the different gods feels much more spectatorly and not driven by any central theme. She basically is sort of maybe on the path to being a creature of Lucifer in some capacity. Lucifer even basically says that at one point.
Right.
But it's not so clear that that's what her journey's about or why. That, I mean, yeah, it's just, it doesn't seem like a very strong thread to pull through everything. And so because that doesn't feel firm, then the lack of firmness around everything else seems really glaring.
Yeah, and the one firm thing we do have to hang our hat on with the Lucifer Who Did It story seems to be less relevant the more issues go by.
The other thing that is that I think is unfortunate is that clearly he was attempting to illustrate something in the foreshadowing, but I'm still at a loss as to exactly what that was, save the fact that the gods do all eventually die. But the last 4 in the 20s kill each other simultaneously, as though fulfilling some thing. Is it just that when the 2-year clock is up, they have to kill themselves, and that's why they did it? Or and because, there's kind of Anaka standing there being and then it begins again, but it's because there's no strict understanding of rules. And I have plenty of things where I'm fine to fill in the blanks. I mean, I'm sure we've had plenty of books that we've shared here where Toby's just as mad about things being one way or another and others of us are not, or vice versa. we've all admitted in different formats that we can handle a certain amount of lack of cohesion. But
yeah,
the longer I sit away from reading this, the more I'm just kind of like, what? Huh?
I want all of it.
Yeah.
Because, and usually that's not my complaint, is like, I wonder what happens next. Like, I'm usually like, I can handle just getting a part of a story. There's a lot of stuff I don't finish. But in this case, like, I do need the rest of it to go, does this work? Does the story work? Because if none of this is ever revealed, then I don't think it works for me. But if at some point, like, that becomes the narrative of, like, what is this really about, then I think I'm more on board. Just as far as, like, the things that I like versus things I don't like, you know?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm having a related experience with the show The Fall on Netflix and BBC Two, where it's been 2 seasons. There's a lot of interesting stuff happened, but the way that the last season ended, I'm kind of like, I need something else for me to make a final judgment. Like, there's plenty of TV series. I mean, Firefly is the classic example, where it's like you can watch that one season and be like, you know what? I wish there was more, but I'm still super jazzed about what I thought.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't feel unhappy or lacking or missing in anything. And there's tons of comics like that. Four Eyes is another one that comes as an example. It's like I long for the day where I can read more, but I still am like, well, that was cool.
Right.
I'm happy with those 4 or 5 issues.
Because it didn't leave me with questions going... Like, I didn't need any answers for those 4 issues.
Right.
I guess. Like, it was still a story, even though, like, it's missing the ending. It's not complete, but there weren't, like, holes missing from those first 4, like I feel like there is in this one.
Yeah, there aren't rules or, like, just general setup missing.
Yeah.
You know, like, you understand this world. You know where things are headed, and there might be twists, and there might be things that are going to change on you. But that's okay because it'll fit within the narrative, or it'll twist the narrative in just the right way. This one is kind of, there's no core to it. Like, you're just trying to figure out what it could possibly be.
I'm wondering, do you think that like the lack of a core in the sense is intentional? Not in a... I almost feel like it's like, I know that I'll get people to read more issues, so I can afford to string this out. Not necessarily like overtly like, ha 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 ha, I will sell twice as many issues by chopping my story up, but almost like a sense of like, oh, I think that I'm teasing this out enough. I mean, I guess everybody does that. So I feel silly almost making that comment or asking that question, but there's almost a part of me that's like, he's almost like confident that this is a compelling enough ride that he's just like, I'll get that.
I get that feeling too, because it's like, it doesn't feel like his early stuff in so much that, like, I felt like there was more in every issue of his early stuff because he wasn't sure how much time he would have to tell those stories.
Yeah, maybe the advantage of Journey into Mystery was that he had an editor who was actually like, okay, you've got 10 issues and counting.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to speculate too much about an author's motives.
No, it's not about the motive. It's just like, now that he's established, is he like, okay, cool, I can flex some muscles and be like, this is going to be a longer story because, one, it's for Image, which means that probably most of it was done before he started putting it out, and not as much direct editorial constraint on him. And 2, he's like, I'm a big enough name now that people are gonna listen for a little bit longer, so I don't have to like Robert Kirkman rush everything out in the first 12 issues of Invincible. I have time to like tell the story I actually intend to tell.
Yeah,
and that could certainly be.
And I feel like, I think that that's a good point, because when I think about it like that, I'm like, if you have a specific 30-issue run in mind where this is all lead up to like, and that's what I mean, is like, I need the rest of it to know like what you're trying to do with these first 5. And
I definitely like where it's gone in issues 5 or 6 and 7, and I think issue 8 comes out like this week.
Yeah, I can't remember if 8's out or not. I know I haven't read it.
Yeah. I think it comes out soon, but I like where it's gone in the second volume. Mm-hmm. Like, they've introduced at least one more character, if not a couple more characters. Like, they're going into the other gods that we haven't seen yet. And I feel like it's compelling enough. I mean, just on the art alone, like I said, like, I fucking love how this looks, that I'm willing to keep going with it and go, okay, maybe at some point, like, there will be enough meat on this story that I'll feel like I got what I wanted. But it definitely is. It has been sparse thus far.
I think, yeah.
And maybe it's because Gillen feels like he's earned enough audience confidence to slow roll his opening, but it definitely makes it hard to read.
Yeah. And I don't even know so much if it's a pacing issue or just that, like, it feels abrupt because it's not done. You know, like, I don't know that there's a pacing issue. Like, I think they read fine.
Well, I don't mean in terms of the pace. I mean in terms of, like, what is he telling you versus not telling you.
I see. Yeah, I could see that. I think, like, yeah, it's always kind of hard to tell how they're writing a story, like, how it's supposed to read.
Yeah, is this supposed to be like a Christopher Nolan-esque thriller where we're going to get to the last 3 issues and be like, oh my god, it was there the whole time?
Right, or is this just like a cool story?
And I guess that's the thing is that
celebrity?
I don't, if that is what's being attempted, I don't. Like, I have a sense of like, okay, I'm not being told everything that's going on, but that is building tension.
Right,
and I'm
unreliable narrator type stuff.
Yeah,
or,
it's like, okay, so I know that maybe, you know, there's going to be a twist. And I'm not getting that sense. I'm just kind of getting like we'll get back to
even
that
in a
later.
murder mystery, like I find, and Toby and I have talked about this off air before, but like part of the reason I love detective fiction versus part of the reason that Toby's not as fond of it is like the whodunit to me is like a big deal. When the case is finally solved and all of the like neat tidy bows are put on, like, and that's what happened, that's how that guy ended up in that room with the gun that wasn't his, and this, like, those pieces matter. And if that's I like feel like that's what it started to be, is like who snapped the fingers and blew the judge's head off, and then it becomes less like,
and that's the thing, is that I don't think that,
for that
what
anymore.
happened isn't important so much as why.
Right, and they're kind of linked in my mind. Is like, again, it's like that's part of the whodunit. Is like that guy did it for these reasons, you know, and that's why I love detective fiction. Is like it's the journey of finding those pieces, and I kind of thought this was going to be like that, because it sets up on a, I didn't do that. You help solve the mystery that, you know.
Yeah, well, and there's also the, you know, why were there gunmen trying to kill the god?
Right, and I'm still...
Why did the judge get murdered? Who's out to get these gods? And then it's kind of like there's all this weird infighting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, so we're not worried about some sort of external threat?
Right.
Or something?
Yeah, and I think it just, like, left me a little
I like
confused.
jailbreak and robbery movies for the same reason. Like, I love, like, you know, this is how we do the heist, you know, Ocean's 11.
It's great when a plan comes together kind of feeling, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think like the tension and release feels weird in this because they like built tension and then they just ignored that there was tension for a while. And I don't know if it's going to come back and I'm going to be like, but I'm not tense about that anymore. Like,
well,
I don't care.
I think the idea is supposed to be like literally any of them could have done it.
Right.
And now that has been established, like going forward, you're going, okay, one of these people did it. Maybe more than one of these people did it. Any of them could be behind it. Who do you trust? Like, what?
But we've already
what do you
established
believe?
that not every one of them could have done it because some of them have alibis, which is very crime story to me. Where it's like, oh, he's got an alibi.
Can't be the Morgan and the Fomet because
is it, or
they were
are they both lying?
Right.
And
that's the thing, is that I feel like as the story develops, and I'm hoping that it does develop, that that what went down in the first volume will be important for your understanding of, like, when people are saying certain things, you maybe don't necessarily trust what they're saying is accurate because you know that there is a liar and a murderer somewhere here.
Right. Yeah. No, and I like that it makes them all feel unreliable, and even the main character when she meets the Kanye West ball guy.
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh, please don't be the murderer. Like, I'm a huge fan of you." And like in her head, she's like, "I don't want him to be the murderer because I like him," you know. And I don't know. I hope that works itself out in the story. But I think, really, to be honest with you, my biggest problem with this whole story is that truth is stranger than fiction. And that none of these characters are as interesting as the idols or pop personas that they're based on.
Right.
It's like, the truth about real rock stars that burned out by 27 and died is way more interesting than anything a writer has ever written about fake musicians. Because truth in this situation is like way stranger than fiction. Like, they were real people, so they made really crazy, weird decisions. Or
had weird physical things, or...
Yeah, and I like... as far as reading a book about music, which is kind of what this was billed as, is like read about these pop stars. This turned into a superhero story really quickly, and if there's one thing I've read too many of in comic books, it's superheroes, and I'm not really interested in the guy that like falls from the sky and punches lightning into the ground, because I can read about that somewhere else.
I don't necessarily feel that it is a superhero story, but I mean, maybe that's just.
But the conflict is so power based, you know, where they're snapping their fingers and people's heads are exploding and someone's punching fire into the ground and Lucifer jumps up on the windowsill and light explodes out of her like Dazzler and then she blows guys' heads off, and I'm like,
it's interesting. The other I said that I was looking at the art from Preacher because I was thinking of Steve Dillon, but Preacher also came to mind to me because this feels. Because Preacher, the thing I liked about Preacher at the time, which I think it would not wear as well on me these days, because I don't know that's aged particularly well. We'll see.
We'll find out on the next long run.
Yeah, we'll see on the next long run, and we'll see how Seth Rogen handles it. Is that it's for me? It feels less like superheroes and more like what happens. What happens if everybody who has divine powers are kind of assholes?
Yeah, it's like that deconstruction of superheroes kind of thing where it's like, what if all the superheroes are assholes?
Well, see, for me, it doesn't feel as much about the deconstruction of superheroes as much as it feels more about a reconstruction or a kind of a sartorial takedown of divinity.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's a lot of analogy there, so maybe it's not very clear, but like, I don't feel this has a superhero bent to it as much as it's more like, wouldn't it be awesome if God showed up and we're like kind of...
But they have like superpowers.
Well, yeah, but gods have superpowers are god-like powers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like Thor literally is a superhero and a god. Superman is a god.
But not every story where Thor shows up and throws lightning is superhero-esque.
No, and not every story where he shows up is like God-based either.
Yeah,
but
no,
like,
and I'm just saying that I feel like
it's
very
much like superpowers and divine powers in my head are the same.
But the lack of practical effects makes you feel like it's more superhero-y, less divine.
It's the easy like, what is this guy's power? Lightning. What is that guy's power? Snaps and heads blow up. Like, there's no creativity in the magic. And it's something that I love about Constantine is in, like, Mike Carey's run.
Oh, okay.
When he, like, plants a piece of a tree in Eden so that Swamp Thing can, like, grow this mystical old-school armor and get, like, real big and punch a guy. Like, all that magic is so well thought out and so difficult to come up with that I'm impressed by his creativity.
So you just fit a puzzle piece into something that I was trying to work through my head.
Go ahead.
One of the things that I realized bothers me about this is we talked about this too with what was that series about? Was it Rocket Girl? Time travels back in time. And I made the comment then is like, not all teenagers are morons. Mm-hmm. Not all teenagers are unimaginative sheep people. Mm-hmm. And that was the one thing that kind of bothered me about this, where it's like, I felt like it's like, okay, so this is one guy's interpretation of what most teenage, primarily women, are like. Like the main character is like, oh, I'm going to dress up all the way. And, and I think some of that stuff is valid and true, but I kind of got the impression that like all the gods are like narcissistic assholes, not because they're gods, but in some ways because they're teenagers. Yeah. Like, even the main character, like, she got shot at and watched shit explode, and she's like, at home, watching TV, waiting to go see Lucifer and thing, because she's so in love with her idols. Like, there's no depth and texture to them in the way that, like, say, the representation of Kamala Khan, where she's, like, sitting there thinking to herself, is this really a good idea? Should I do this? What about my homework? Like, what about my thing? Like,
what about my family?
Yeah, what about my family?
Do I love my family?
But instead, she, this primary character whose name escapes me, Laura is like, I don't want to talk to my parents even though I got in trouble. Like, like that kind of stuff. And I'm like, teenagers are like that to a certain extent, but like,
not all. I mean, like. Not all of them, and also, is that an interesting story, or have we seen that before?
Yeah, so I mean, like, I think that was the other thing where it's like, okay, all the teenagers who went to see Emeratsu were like the screaming fangirl types. All the teenagers who went to see the Morgan are like, greasy street punk types who like break into subways, and it's just kind of like, I just find myself kind of being like, it feels as weirdly cleanly static representation as the art is. Mm-hmm. Like very flat, and maybe ultimately that will come to be that is actually a device, like that's an effective device because of what he's trying to do. But for right now, I think it just amplifies the things that feel missing. Like,
well, it's also when you take pop idols that exist today and make them into cardboard cutouts of themselves and go like, there's the Daft Punk one, and there's the Lady Gaga one, and there's the Kanye West one, and it's like, is that creative? Or is that like I took this thing that already exists and I just plugged it into my story, and it's not actually as interesting as the real version of it.
And there's the one that acts like Delirium from Sandman.
Yeah, it's
which
like,
is basically what the Morgan is.
It's to the point where like Ball has that painting on the wall of himself, and it's like that's right out of the Kanye Power video. Like that's not even creative. That's just like
Although I did like what he did say with Ball, where he's like, "Do I need to?" I like that sentiment, which I'm sure to a certain extent maybe is Kanye's, where it's like, do I need to be humble if I know that I'm the best?
Yes, that is literally shit Kanye has said. Like, I love reading Kanye's tweets because there's one that's like, I understand that you all hate me, but you have to understand that I don't give a shit. Like, and the thing, like, I'm on Kanye's side on that when it's like, if you are one of the top 10 greatest hip-hop producers of all time, if you have sold more records than everyone else, like, do you really have to be humble all the time? Or can you one day just be like, I'm really good at what I do? Like, I'm actually good at this. Is that so bad?
I'm trying to
There's
remember.
a difference between being humble, being proud, and being cocky.
Yeah.
But
You know.
isn't being an artist kind of a combination of all three? Because if you think you
Well, yeah,
suck, then you don't put anything out of it.
Yeah, but there's a difference between thinking that you suck and being humble.
Yeah,
like
well,
when you're
there's a
humble,
difference between being humble and being self-effacing.
But
Yeah.
you have to imagine that everything you put out is the best thing that you could possibly put out, and that you believe in it 100%.
Well, there's a difference between saying, I did the best that I could, and saying, this is the greatest shit that has ever existed.
But a lot of the success of Kanye is that he has always been his own hype machine. And he's like, if you guys don't listen to this, you missed the greatest album of the year. Don't you want to listen to that?
I can safely say that I've only ever listened to one Kanye album. And it was because we were playing video games, and a friend of mine put it on, and we listened to it while we were playing video games, and I was like, all right, that's the music you put on.
Right.
And that is the one and only time that I've listened to a Kanye album. And when he says he is the greatest artist of this generation, I go, okay, cool story.
Yeah.
I'm not going to listen.
So this segues really well into the question that I'm going to jump
Wait.
jump on. Nope, too late. Train has passed. Surprise question time.
Oh my God, it's the lightning round.
Oh, God.
When you were in high school, what band did you absolutely like just fucking geek out over? Like, just that was your shit. That band was everything.
I refuse
to you.
to answer this in the
No,
grounds
you
that
have to
incriminate
answer
me.
it.
I'll go first if you want.
Go for it.
It was two. It was two bands. One, Red Hot Chili Peppers. I was obsessed with Red Hot Chili Peppers when I was in high school. One, because I'm a bass player, and Flea, like, was
Dominates.
just the coolest shit ever, right? And so when I was in middle school, I bought Blood Sugar Sex Magic, which is still my favorite Red Hot Chili Peppers album of all time. And I think that album's absolutely phenomenal still to this day, and I loved it. And I just, like, if it was possible to wear out a CD, I would have done it, but you can't, so I didn't. And then Californication came out when I was in high school, to give you kind of a timeline of when this stuff was happening. And that's when they blew up in a lot of ways commercially for a lot of people. I mean, Under the Bridge was a big hit, which was on Blood Sugar Sex Magic had two of their big radio hits, which was Under the Bridge and Give It Away Now, which is the only song I skip on that album because I've heard it too many times. And then Californication, like, they were on MTV Total Request Live Video Countdown for like months. You could listen to that song, and it was just everywhere, and I loved it. The other album was, I think it was 2003, Stankonia came out, the Outkast album, and you could not go anywhere without hearing I'm Sorry, Miss Jackson. And so I bought that album too, and like that's when I got obsessed with Outkast. And then in 2005, they put out their last studio album, which was the Love Below Speaker Box double disc collection, and they won like a shit ton of Grammys for that year. And that was my last year in high school. So like those two bands were like my jam in high school.
I'm not sure. And I say that because I don't think that I got really into music. Well, I mean, I've always been into music, but I've always liked a lot of stuff. And so I can't think of like one. There's been a couple bands where basically like throughout high school and stuff, I basically collected like all of their music that I could get my hands on. Collective Soul was big for me for some reason. And Soundgarden was huge. The first 2 CDs I ever bought was Super Unknown by Soundgarden and Frog Stomp by Silverchair. And I still own them because they're amazingly good. Even though they're not necessarily. Well, Super Unknown,
that's okay.
Super Unknown is amazing. Frog Stomp is not Silverchair's best work.
Kayleigh's,
yeah, mine are great.
I'm sure.
But
Kayleigh and I have talked about music at that era, too.
I like
it.
Yeah.
You're younger than I am, so you were in college when I was in college when you were in high school.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I also kind of have to pull a little bit of an audible on this because I was in high school from 1996 until 2000, which was basically the years of Napster.
Oh,
That was when Napster was huge. So I would just go on Napster I'd wait until like 10, 11 o'clock at night when my parents went to bed. I'd dial up my 33.6 baud modem, log into Napster, queue up a whole bunch of shit, and then go to sleep and let it download all night and set my computer to automatically disconnect about 10 minutes before my dad woke up in the morning. And so that way, like, it would use the phone line the entire night, like download a bunch of stuff. And so my music collection was just all of these random ass MP3s. Like, I wouldn't download an entire album or listen to a specific artist. However, when I was in middle school the year before that, there was one album that I probably listened to on repeat 200 times that year, which was Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill.
Oh my God.
That's good. I had that one too.
It's an incredible album.
It is an incredible album.
It's funny because I wasn't old enough for the Napster thing because I was like still too young to like fully appreciate what it meant to be able to download music for free because I wasn't even like really buying music until 2000. Like 99, 2000 was when I was first old enough to have like spending money. That I remember. So I remember carrying around binders full of CDs that I had purchased.
Yep.
And like you and your friends would like swap binders of CDs, like those CD case binders, and like you'd flip through them and like look at your friends' music, and you would. I remember spending a lot of time organizing the CD binders.
Yeah, what my friends and I would do is we would swap our binders full of CDs, and then also with like an empty binder, and then give it back, and it would be just ripped copies of everything, and just like burn a whole bunch of CDs, and so that's how I collected all my music.
I did have a binder of CDs. In fact, I think I still have that binder of CDs in my closet.
Yeah,
but like I didn't collect a super lot of CDs.
I did it all. Lots of CDs, lots of downloading. My music tastes are incredibly broad, so.
It was when I started playing jazz music really heavily, was in high school. I joined the jazz band and the jazz choir, and I was playing jazz upright bass every day for like hours at a time. So I remember going to these used record stores and used CD stores and buying really obscure jazz albums and like transcribing bass parts and learning about jazz mechanically through listening. So like I had tons of old Ray Brown stuff, and I loved Chick Corea and Return to Forever because Stanley Clarke I think is like one of the absolute best bass players to have ever lived. And if you listen to him play on Spain is the name of that song, it's unreal that he can play that fast, and it's not fair because he has giant fingers and I'll never have fingers that are that long, and so he can make gaps and play in octaves that I can't even play in, and I will always hate him for that. But he's an amazing bass player, and like obviously old like Jaco Pastorius stuff and all that, but finding Christian McBride albums and just like looking for old jazz bass player stuff that was really crazy. So a lot of my music from like mid 2000s to like 2008 when I left college, when I stopped being a music major, a jazz performance music major, was like all jazz for like a good 4 to 6 year chunk of my life too. So
before you give yours, Kayleigh, there's been this thing passed around on Facebook where it's like you answer like 10 or 12 questions and it guesses your age. And my wife did it, and a couple other people that she knew did it, and they all guessed right. And I took it, and it thought I was 54. And I'm almost positive it's the music thing.
Yeah, I always same thing with me. Like I always get really on any of those quizzes. I get like a lot older than I am.
Yeah, it's like you don't even you hate Britney Spears. I'm like, actually, I like Britney Spears.
Yeah.
She's fine.
You Toxic was my jam for 1 year.
Yeah, it's good. It was playing in the co-op. It was awesome.
So I have 2 bands. One of them a little bit more than the other, but I would like to preface before I say these 2 bands. Growing up, like, Twin Towers happened. I was in 4th grade.
Wait, you were in the 4th grade when the Twin Towers fell?
Yes.
I was.
Oh my god!
I was in 9th grade when that happened.
Oh my god!
Yeah, my
never ask Kayleigh how old she was when a thing happened.
It was the week. It was one of the first weeks of school of my freshman year of high school.
On my first weeks of school in 4th grade.
It was
Mrs.
my
Soule.
freshman or sophomore year of college.
They shut all the airports down, and that was like a week before I had to fly back to Olympia. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be there in time for classes if the airports don't open up.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird growing up, or like at least being in high school in a post 9/11 world, with that like such an immediate thing that it just happened. I'm sure it was even weirder.
Well, for
fourth
me,
grade.
people always talk about post 9/11 world, and for me, it's
all post 9/11
it's
world.
always been like I really don't.
Well, let me tell you, back in the old days.
Back in the old days, we still
wasn't
had
much
2
better.
towers in New York. So I like grew up in that generation. Also, people like to blame my generation for a lot of generational ills. Yeah,
Actually, we're still we're all technically the same generation.
Yeah.
Millennials.
We're a bunch of lazy motherfuckers.
So the rumor is.
All that being said, my 2 favorite bands were Fall Out Boy and, most importantly, My Chemical Romance.
Yeah.
I had My Chemical Romance stationery that I bought from Hot Topic. Like,
not a thing.
it is a thing. It's lined paper.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like lined college ruled paper, and there is a watermark at the bottom that says My Chemical Romance. And I had it. I spent
And you
a
don't
lot
still
of
love
money
these
on
bands?
it. Oh, I do.
Okay.
Actually,
Well, My Chemical Romance isn't around anymore. They broke up.
and then Fall Out Boy broke up, and I was sad at the time. Now I kind of wish that they had stayed broken up. But
Are they back?
Yeah.
Oh.
Right after high school, I was really into Jimmy Eat World.
Oh yeah, they're good too. But
all I know about Fall Out Boy is you cannot understand any of their lyrics.
Really?
Yeah.
I can totally understand it.
Really?
yeah, they're. Pretty
I love
easy to understand.
This ain't a scene. It's a goddamn arms race.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
like
a
the best-
Gotham arse face?
No,
It's
it's
shut
a
up.
goddamn arms
Arms
race.
race.
It's a Gotham ass face.
Yes, that's it.
What does he say in the song that we're going down, down in, what's that next word?
And we're spinning around.
No, he's like, we're going down, down. We're
We're going down, down, and we're spinning around.
Nah, it's not. Those aren't the words. I
Yeah,
promise
really
you they're
are.
not the
Almost
words.
positive there.
So
No.
I don't know what the words are, but they're not that.
not those words. But like I was thinking about it, and there were 3 songs in high school that if you started singing, everybody in my high school, which was a very poor school, would start singing. And it was
Was it Shelton? You grew up in Shelton? Okay.
yeah. We had a graduation rate of 49%, which meant
Wow.
a higher percentage dropped out before graduating than actually graduated.
It's like you were in the South. Congratulations.
Yeah, it was great. No.
4 people did not go to college from my high school. Everyone graduated.
Wow.
Because I went to a weird private school.
Oh. Yeah.
And it was like, I didn't want to go to college after high school. And they were like, it was like the biggest deal anyone had. I was like, I just don't want to go. And they're like, you have to go. This is a preparatory school. You must go to college. And I was like, I don't really want to, though.
No.
That would have been a different world.
Yeah, Shelton is not that. So there were 3 songs that if you sang, everybody else would join in, and it was Teenagers by My Chemical Romance, which is Teenagers Scare the Living Shit Out of Me. And then I Don't Care by Fall Out Boy, and I'm Sorry, Miss Jackson by Outkast.
Yeah, because it was fucking
Yeah, it was
everywhere.
great.
I discovered Outkast and essentially hip hop because of that song. Like I knew Jay-Z was already huge in the 2000s. Like 3 Blueprint albums had come out at that point, I think. Like,
so the songs that helped introduce me to rope me in my white middle class suburbia was Gangster's Paradise.
I remember that
California Love.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was more Tupac, less Jay-Z.
Well, I don't know. I've always been an East Coast fan. Yeah. Even today, I'm still, with the exception of like a few people coming out of LA, I'm more a fan of, I don't know.
I haven't kept up.
It's not really a big debate anymore, but I mean, Outkast kind of ended the East versus West deal. If anyone wants to talk to me about hip hop, I'm available after the show at chard@viewfromthegutters.com.
Well, I think that this is an important, relevant conversation to The Wicked and the Divine, because I think that Gillen is somebody for whom your musical references are the most important thing. Like that, that's it. Like the things that you listen to and what they meant to you at the time, like that is your life's history. Like these are his gods.
Yeah.
These are the things that, the people that he prays to, and the ideal that he upholds, or the feeling and the emotion and the rituals.
Yeah. The like pre-concert ritual, the like going to a show kind of deal.
Yeah, like putting on your war makeup.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because something that music does for me is it tells you when you were around. More than anything else, is like if a song is relevant to you or not has a lot more to do with how your age than like whether you were into music or not into music. There's definitely a culture of like, I know every obscure band ever, so therefore I am in this class of musician or this class of like music consumer. But
oral dick measuring.
Yeah, that definitely that hipster culture of like, oh, but do you know this person? And you know this person? Like, I saw them in a basement with 2 people.
Toby and I saw Flogging Molly before they were big.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, literally like 6 months before they were big.
Yeah, it was so weird because we went to a show and it was like, I don't know, like 100 people maybe in some skank-ass, venue in South Seattle. And then the next time we saw them was at the Crystal Ballroom. And like we were standing there and we were juniors in college?
Yeah.
And it was like 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds were like, Flogging Molly is amazing. And we were just like, what the hell has happened?
I think that was actually 2 years later, because I saw Flogging Molly my freshman year, and then my sophomore year everybody went to the concert without me on my birthday. And I was super pissed. And then the year after that, we all went.
I have no recollection of these events.
Oh,
I can neither confirm or deny my presence.
I mostly blame Tyler and Brian Forbes. So you are absolved of whatever sin you may hold.
My only story that is in any way remotely similar to that was I was on my way up to Seattle to go see a Talib Kweli show. And I was listening to Macklemore on the way up because I really like the Versus EP. And I was like, man, this guy did not get good until he met Ryan Lewis, who's from the same hometown I'm from, is like a year older than me and went to high school like not very far away from. And I knew a lot of the musicians in the town because like we would all play at the same festivals. And I never met that guy. So I just thought it was weird. But I was listening to the Versus EP, or I think it's not the Versus EP or the Unplanned mixtape. The one that he did with Ryan Lewis. And I was like, this guy got a lot better when he met Ryan Lewis. And I got to the Talib Kweli show, and Talib did the song from Kanye's College Dropout. And from out of the back, during what would have been Kanye's verse on that song, Macklemore comes out and does a freestyle verse during that. And I was like, that is so bizarre that Macklemore's here, because no one knows who this guy is. And he came out and the crowd was like, who's this motherfucker? And then Talib was like, yeah, Macklemore, everybody support your local rappers. And like it was like a big deal. And then probably like a month, maybe 2 months later, the heist dropped, and now way more people know who Macklemore is than Talib. And it was just like the most surreal, weird experience for me. Just that whole night was crazy weird.
I guess it was last year. I was working for TVW, which is like the local public affairs network. They cover the state legislature here. And we were recording something with these like 40-year-old lobbyists, and they were singing Macklemore. Like,
I heard
everybody knows who fucking Macklemore.
I heard it in
is.
Japan.
Yeah.
Like, I was in a shopping mall in Shibuya, and it was like, fucking Macklemore's on. It was bizarre. Because I also remember hearing Thrift Shop, and I was like, this guy's gonna blow up. Like, this song's real good. And now I can't listen to that song anymore, because it's just like, I've heard it 8 million times. But the first time I heard it, I was like, this is cool. But yeah, it was kind of surreal to be in the Northwest and be like, this guy, who's a local Northwest rapper and has been around for like, I don't know, 10 years, went to the same college I'm from, works with the producers from the same town as me, is going to blow up on an international scale. Like, it was, that's my like one seeing someone before they're famous story. But my side note, that was all a side note to my point, which I guess was the age you're at, because of the way we consume music most, which is like through the radio or through our friends or through word of mouth, your age has a lot more to do with like what your musical taste was into.
Does it?
I think so. I think if you talk about pop music, if you're going to talk about relevant pop music, most of what you listened to was because of like what was happening at that time in your life. And so I think talking about music with someone else more than anything is about like, where were you when this album dropped? Where were you when this band blew up for the first time? It has a lot to do with like how it impacted your life, and that says a lot about how old you are. Because like we were saying, like when this album came out in 2003, like I was in high school and Kayleigh was in junior high or elementary school, and like
6th grade.
Yeah, it like did something different to each of us, right? So that's what it is to me. And it also really brings up the point that I think young people have a really stupid here, young people are dumb. Here's my young people are dumb rant. Young people have a really stupid understanding of what music does to people, because I hear a lot, and this is weird, but I hear this on the internet a lot of just like, I'm just looking for the perfect girlfriend / boyfriend / whatever that listens to the same music I listen to. And I just think that is literally the most irrelevant thing you could look at in another person, because music is such a personal thing that like most of the time when I'm listening to music, I'm not listening to it with someone else. So who gives a shit about what they like? Well, and if we listen to it in the car, like, is it really such a big deal to trade off?
But here's my counter to that.
Yeah.
I think that the thing about being younger, it seems, I try to remember, but it doesn't work as well as it used to. Mm-hmm. Is that those things feel hyper personal, right? It's only as you get older that you kind of get a certain level of granularity. Yeah. So like you want to hang out with people that who like only like the things that you do. Yeah. And like you get into these weird factions where it's like, well, you like the Genesis and I like SNES, so we can never fucking be friends.
And that's so weird.
And it's so weird. But I mean, it's like that weird tribal instinct, and I think it's because things seem hyper personal. And I think that's why some people like me had a really hard time, because I grew up in a family that was very multifaceted. My parents were very eclectic, and so I was very eclectic. And so one of my favorite stories from my like the first week or two that I was in college was this guy lived on my floor named Brian. He was super into like Portishead and really aggressive rock, like at the time what would have been very obscure to a lot of people kind of rock. And I liked some of that stuff too, but didn't have the exposure to it. He did, so he'd play this stuff and I'd really like it. But occasionally I would trap him in my room and start playing stuff like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, because I thought it was hilarious, because he basically thought it was torture, and I liked that stuff too. And so it's like, but that was how I started to learn, like, yeah, you know what, like you can still be friends with somebody even though they don't like half the stuff that you like.
You can be friends with someone that likes almost nothing that you like.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. But I think
as long as you have, like, you don't even really have to have something in common with someone.
I think that's harder when you're. I mean, I think it can be done. I'm not saying that every person out there when they're young hangs out with only people that. But I think you tend to gravitate towards shared and common experiences. I mean, I think the counter to that maybe would be like really long childhood friends. Like you knew them for so long that doesn't matter if your stuff is exactly the same. But I think normally if you're kind of glomming onto new people, or your primary tribe probably has very similar tastes, and you find strength or definition through that. Yeah,
and I agree with you. Like, I think that happens. I think it's dumb, and I think that's why a lot of people have such a hard time with school, with making friends, with relationships, with growing up, is like, you don't have to just like people that likes the same shit as you, because that guy may love everything that you like, but maybe a total asshole.
Yeah, I would argue that in some ways maybe the internet makes that worse, because now you can see that there are so many people out there. Like, in some ways it's good, right? Because you can see there are other people like you. And I think in other ways it could be bad, because you see there's so many other people like, you know, quote unquote like you, but they're not right here with you.
Right.
I think that there's something to be said for common likes and common interests. And I'm remembering specifically a time I was at a party at a friend's house in his basement with like some people I knew and some people I didn't know. Like, it was a pretty big mix of people. And we're playing pool on his pool table, and somebody starts kind of humming the Super Mario Brothers 2 theme. And we're probably 4 or 5 beers in at this point, and slowly but surely the entire room erupts into everybody doing a shitty off-key version, or, you know, a cappella rendition of the Super Mario Brothers 2 theme, because that is something common that we all loved from our childhoods. Because, you know, we were roughly the same age, give or take 5 years. And like, that was just a common thing that we all appreciated. Like, there's something to be said for shared interests reflecting shared thoughts, shared perspectives.
I find that to be not true at all.
I think it provides a common ground.
Yeah, but like, I know so many people that love stuff that I like, and I hate that person because they're an asshole.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's
Because they're an
fair.
asshole?
Yeah, because they're an asshole. No, like, I'll fully own the fact that I'm an asshole and I don't like other people, but that literally has nothing to do with the fact of whether they are an asshole or not. I just, like, don't like anyone. And that's my asshole nature, is like, I have a hard time being like, oh, let that slide, and you said a stupid thing, and I'll totally be like, oh, dude, it's okay, you didn't mean to say that stupid thing. Like, I'm the one that's the first one there to point out that you're dumb, and that's what makes me an asshole. That's the abrasive nature I have, and I don't care, because I don't expect people to like me. So it's like, it's easier for me to just like be myself than worry about whether other people like me or not. But to me, it's like, I don't care if you like the same shit I like. I don't care if you hate all the stuff I like. That has literally nothing to do with whether or not I'm going to like you or not.
Yeah, but I've been in situations on many occasions where I'm in a room with somebody, I'm like, I fucking hate your guts. You're a dick. I don't like you. And I'll go like, yeah, we'll talk about, just be talking about whatever, and I'll be like, oh, you like this thing? I like this thing too. That is our common thing. Let's talk about that, because as long as we're on the same page, I can ignore all the things I don't like about you.
I guess. I mean, I think that that's something that this book, and specifically Phonogram, like, that's why that falls so short for me, is because Phonogram is all about, like, we're all shared members of the same cult of music, right? But once that music goes away, like, where did we go? And to me, it's like, you don't go anywhere. You were always the same person that you were when that music existed or not. And Gillian's like quote about that, or kind of his like thesis about Phonogram, is like, we were never a crowd, we were just a bunch of people all in the same place. Like, that speaks way more to me than like we were all a shared part of the cult of music.
Well, I think that this is a lot of the push and pull you get in a lot of the, and I think that quote-unquote geek culture is experiencing this very sharp rocking back and forth, right? Where I think that there were a lot of people who clung to this kind of hyper-tribalism, right? Like, everybody who plays D&D must be allied, no matter how disgusting, unkempt, or assholish they may be, because there's so few of us, the tribe must survive. And now it's kind of like, you can see all the weird factions fighting amongst themselves in comics and video games, because, you know, half of them are like, no, we must stay together to survive, and the rest of us are like, you know, you're actually like weird, sexist, racist Neanderthals, and like, get the fuck away from me,
right?
You know, and or all the other various flavors of ice cream within there. And so I think it's weird. Like, I think that both can be true. I think there are a group of people who will pick up Phonogram or this and are like, yes, I understand what it's like to be on the meta with a rock god. And then there are some of us who are just going to be like, nah, I've never been that invested in a particular persona. Like, my relationship with music is much more fluid or emotional, and not nearly so cultural.
Well, the thing I wanted to point out is that Laura kind of talks disparagingly of fans of the other gods. Who, like, oh yeah, the ones that like Terra are just kind of, you know, they're shallow and they're this and they're that.
Yeah.
And like, I'm better because I like Ami, as she calls her, you know. And I think that like, I grew up in a high school where that was very much so the case.
I think we all did.
Yeah, it's like, it's a very teenage feeling, and I don't want to generalize in that, but when you are young and full of angst, you cling to things that help you deal with that. And so in my case, it was listening to a lot of really angry music that was like, oh, you know, like, the things that they said hurt, but, you know, like, you've got a gun under your shirt and now you're going to make them pay for what they did. Like, and you're like yelling that along in the car with your best friends who all feel the same way. And that's sort of your release. And then you're like, oh, but the assholes who listen to fucking Kanye, like, you know, Yep, that was you.
Except College Dropout didn't come out till my last year of high school, so I wasn't listening to Kanye in high school. But
does My Chemical Romance sing about having guns under their shirts?
Yeah, that's teenagers. It's like the line.
Not that
is
was
like,
Gorillaz, I thought it was kids with guns.
Well, there's a couple. Well, when I was a teenager, like, every other song was about how you have a gun.
See, which is strange because all the crap that I listened to in high school wasn't about any of that, but that's what they said made people shoot people with guns. So,
that was because it was when I was growing up. It was like, oh my god, you're gonna shoot us up because you wear black lipstick. And it's like, no, I just like the way it makes my lips look.
Yeah,
you know, or
it's
whatever.
It's just super fucking hardcore, man.
Yeah, it's just
have
super
a gun.
Fucking cool. God damn it, I'm just so cool.
Yeah.
With my big blue rings around my eyes and black lipstick. Yes.
I think the flip side of this. Well, I guess is exactly what you're talking about with her, like, judging the fans of the other gods. That's always bothered me is, like, if I love a movie and someone else doesn't like it, I don't think less of them for not liking it. Like, it hurts me because it's like, I want them to love it because I love it. Like, if you came up to me and told me that you don't like Coming to America, I would be like, but that's like one of the greatest comedies of all time. Like, it wounds me because I'm like, no, love it, love the things I love as much as I love them. But I don't go like, well, that person has no taste and they suck because they don't like that thing. Like, it's just like, I want everyone to love the stuff that I love.
Yeah, some people are more weirdly, not weirdly, but some people just become more attached, more vested.
And when there's definitely, someone said this to me, I don't remember who it was, but somebody in my, I don't, or what movie it was, we were talking about, but if someone was like, if someone doesn't like this movie, like, I definitely think less of them. And I was like, that's such a weird, like, I had never really, like, thought about it in those terms before, and I was like, that's such a weird thing. Like, it kind of blew my mind a little bit, because but there's definitely, like, that idea of taste and that idea of, like, wow, this person doesn't like the greatest movie ever made. They must be real dumb. Like, that,
well, I think that there's a part of people that conflates taste with identity.
Yeah.
Like, I like this thing. It's part of who I am.
This is me now.
If you criticize that thing, you are criticizing me.
Absolutely.
Like, I think that's a lot of where the knee-jerk, like, we can't have feminist critiques about comic books.
Right.
Because you're saying that I'm an asshole because I like this thing that you say is bad.
Well, you're saying a thing that I love
and
is
you're
flawed.
you're trying to change that thing. That means that you're trying to change me. Right. And I don't want you to change me because I like who I am.
Yeah, and I see that. It's the flip side of it that I don't understand. It's the flip side of, like, you don't like a thing I like. Like, how dare you not like the thing I like? Like, that's
why soccer hooligans cave in people's skulls for liking other teams. I mean, people get weirdly invested in shit.
Yeah. It's weird, man. Blows my mind. I mean, I'm more understanding of if I was like, wow, you don't like Coming to America? Like, that's crazy. Versus, like, that person hates Coming to America. I would definitely feel more attacked in one of those scenarios, which is, like, if they hate it, then I'm like, whoa. It's got a lot of good stuff. Like, I feel the need to defend myself, but it's the opposite that I can't understand.
Yeah.
I did once in high school spend a good 15 minutes arguing with somebody, trying to convince them that Resident Evil was the worst piece of shit game that has ever existed.
Truth.
When I had never played Resident Evil and I had no idea what Resident Evil was, but they were saying that PlayStation was better than N64 because it had Resident Evil, and therefore that was a thing that I had to destroy.
It was PlayStation was better than Nintendo 64.
I'm not going to debate that.
GoldenEye really bumps up the bonus points on that.
Yeah, GoldenEye's all right.
But the point is that they thought that something was better than the thing that I liked So I then had to destroy the thing that they liked.
Yeah, that's weird.
Like, that's teenagers.
Yep.
That's weird. I'm sure I was like that. I don't remember a lot of high school, but I'm sure I was like that too. But to me, thinking back on it, I'm just like, that is the weirdest thing I've ever heard of.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly stupid.
Yeah.
It sounds almost teenager-esque.
Yeah.
One would say.
It's
maybe
not,
a bit sophomoric
it's
or
not,
something. I don't know.
It's not even that it's about teenagers too, because like the person I was talking about that said that about that movie was like 30.
Well,
So it has like nothing to do with how old you are and just like how you think about the world. I don't know. Anyway, that's what this book makes me think of. So like in a lot of ways, there's a lot of stuff I don't like about this book purely on the like cultural level of like, not to mention that I find it like it's not trying to be inventive. And I guess not everything has to be inventive, but like...
Well, I think there are definitely issues with this book, and I want to see where it goes.
I'm going to keep reading it, though. Like, I don't dislike it enough to be like, no one should ever read it.
I like it enough to keep reading it every month, so that tells you something.
Yeah, I'll read it. I'm just, like, not overly fond of it. That's why I didn't make my 52 weeks of Image, if anyone was wondering. Anything else you guys wanted to add about the book before we move on to Rex?
No, I'm good.
All right. Kayleigh,
Okay.
what would you like to recommend this week? Ooh!
I brought Silver Surfer by
Aw, damn.
Mike Allred. It's fantastic. I read it at Kirby's recommendation.
Dan Slott.
Yep. And going to be cosplaying it at ECC. I will be doing
You're
Dawn.
be the Silver Surfer.
No, I'm going to be Dawn.
You're not cosplaying as Toomey?
No.
Damn.
I will be Dawn. Kerbo is going to be Eve, which is her twin sister. So look for us on the con floor, maybe.
Oh, look for all of us on the con floor.
Giant Galactus.
I wish.
God, me too.
God, he's such a party pooper. He doesn't dress up ever.
No, what he should actually cosplay as is Galan. So he should get like the bomber jacket or whatever when Galactus was made into a human.
Yeah.
Wait, when did that happen?
Back when, geez, it's been almost 10 years now.
I don't remember.
Jesus Christ, I've never heard of this.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What the hell?
There's this whole thing. I mean, Johnny Storm becomes a herald of Galactus,
Yep.
and Galactus gets turned into a human.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Was this
I think it was Wade, maybe?
Mark Wade's Fantastic
Yeah.
Four?
Yeah,
I think so.
Okay. I haven't read
But yeah,
that.
I have a versus card, which is a picture of Galan like eating a hot dog, and just like totally being like,
That's
the
insane.
devourer of worlds, but not.
Um,
It's awesome.
yeah.
That was during one of the periods where I was just not reading Marvel.
Yeah. Not to take anything away from the guy we saw 2 years ago in Emerald City that was dressed up like Galactus. That was like one of the coolest costumes
Oh,
I've
yeah.
ever seen.
Did
Yeah, I
he
saw
have
that.
like a Silver Surfer action figure
like
on
on-
on a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was sweet. I have pictures of it somewhere, but it was rad. Yeah, this book's really good.
It's really good. So it's after the Silver Surfer is like no longer the Herald, and he,
Which seems to change like every 6 months.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And he's kind of going around the universe trying to right his wrongs, and this planet comes to him and like, well, you need to save our planet. And he's like, well, that's kind of what I do. Sure. What's up? And they're like, well, we kidnapped somebody who's very dear to you, so you have to help our planet. And he's like, wow, that was 1 or 2 steps too many. I was going to help you anyway. Okay. And it's this Earth girl that he's never met before. He has no idea who she is. And when they like present her to him, he's just like, I don't know who this is. I mean, I'll rescue her because it's the right thing to do, and I'll rescue your planet because it's the right thing to do. But why are you doing this? And it's this really great, fun story of Norrin, the Silver Surfer, just kind of going around the universe with this Earth girl.
Can I just say for the record that I think it's awesome that the Silver Surfer's last name is Rad?
Yes.
Yes.
It is, in fact, awesome.
It's kind of weird because you think it would have been alliterative, given all the other characters, Peter Parker,
Not every Marvel character.
Bruce Banner. Yeah, I know, like Tony Stark's.
A lot of them are, though.
Well, it's superhero tradition.
Yeah.
Paisley Paul.
Cool. Yeah, Silver Surfer is fucking great.
Mm-hmm.
It's got this most recent version. You only get a little bit of it in the first arc, but it takes on a very kind of like Doctor Who vibe.
Yep.
with the Silver Surfer as like this guy who's like, he's been everywhere, he's seen everything, and Dawn is this Earth girl who's hanging around with him, and she's like experiencing this stuff for the first time. So it's very cool, really, really well done.
Not as cool as Cammy and Drax, but still cool.
Yeah, but what in this universe is?
And not a lot.
Brant, what do you got?
I decided to I'm just going to keep carpet bombing the podcast with it.
Please stop
Don't even
attacking
remember
our stuff. We have nice things now. Don't
Atomic
break
Robo
them.
and the
Atomic Robo, now available free online at atomicrobo.com.
It's a webcomic now.
Yay!
It's actually kind of exciting to me.
Yeah, no, I'm super stoked. Although I added it to my RSS feed, and then they started uploading their entire archive, so my RSS feed was just churning constantly with
You
like
have
10 new updates every minute.
1,565.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. It's not even like,
1,700.
it's like, you have 10 new notifications, clear all. You have 10 new notifications, clear all. You have 10 new notifications. God damn it. And so I had to like take it out of my RSS feed, and now I'm afraid I'll forget to like put it back in there once they've got everything uploaded.
Yeah, I got to make a note to myself. Add to Comic Rocket.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I don't
Atomic Robo.
have an RSS feed,
Me neither.
so...
I have
Like-
bookmarks
Comic
that I
Rocket.
go to.
Use Comic Rocket. It's awesome.
Maybe.
Doesn't
what?
Comic Rocket not pay the creators?
No, they specifically say that on their, I mean, unless they're lying, their whole thing is that it actually loads the website into the browser. They
Oh,
basically
okay.
put a tool over it. So their ads still display, their pages still get hit, but it bookmarks you. So if you're, so I've used Comic Rocket because I've come into a lot of series late and I can't keep reading them, but I don't want to like have to manually remember where I'm at.
That's for webcomics.
Yeah. Anything that's basically got an RSS feed it can handle. As
Yeah.
far as I've been able to.
I just loaded all my comics into an RSS reader, like God knows how many years ago at this point. So like if it updates every day, I see the updates. If it doesn't update once except every 6 months, when that one update comes through, I'll see it. And it stops me from doing the thing that I used to do, which was have a bookmark folder and just click open all like 6 times a day.
Yeah, that's
and
what I
then
do.
close through all the windows like didn't update, and be all obsessive and weird about it. Because now I know I'll get the notification. I don't have to think about it. And it's made my life so much easier.
Yeah, I don't really know how to internet, so I don't know how to use Twitter. I don't know what any of this stuff is, so...
Well, bookmarks are easy because if you go to Chrome, there's just a little star in the corner.
No, I know how to bookmark
Okay,
things.
good.
So
that's how
I mean, that
do it.
doesn't seem that complicated.
So you know how to internet a little bit.
A
Just
little.
a tiny bit.
A
Okay.
tiny bit of
Well,
internet.
we'll set you up with Gopher and Archie,
That's
and you'll
all.
be fine.
No, I don't need any of this. It's way too complicated for me. I don't like anything enough to set up stuff to keep track of it for me. I have email.
Yeah.
You
Good
can
job.
email me at chard@aol.com. You can't. But it's crazy to me that
No.
still exists.
AOL keyword Andrew Chard.
Yeah.
One word.
It's fucking nuts that people still have AOL email addresses to
That's
me.
basically all AOL is these days.
Yeah, but that's crazy.
Pay $15 a month for an email address.
Yep.
Do you
Because
really?
you've had it since 1997.
You still have to pay for AOL
I don't.
email?
I have
Okay.
no idea.
I was like, that can't be a thing. They know it's free everywhere else.
AOL is still a company, so therefore you must still be able
They must
to
have a
pay
revenue
for it.
stream.
Like apparently a large portion of their revenue stream are people who don't own computers. I'm not even joking. Because they're like, I need to get this internet thing. And then they pay for it and they have no idea what it is. And so they just pay for it every month and don't know.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Ah.
Imagine you're you, but you're 50 years older than you.
Yeah, I would be dead. I'm imagining a skeleton that has no need for
and that
AOL.
skeleton will have automatic bill pay set up and will be paying $9.95 for AOL
No.
for the next
Nope.
100 years.
False. That is false. I'm a skeleton floating in space, and I have no need for such earthly things.
Brent, did you want to say anything else about Atomic Robo?
No. I
What
think I've talked
volume are
about
you
it.
pitching?
1 and 2.
1 and 2? Okay. And 3?
I'm going to read 1, 2, and 3.
Let's
if
do
we
1, 2,
pick
and
it.
3.
All right.
Because 3 is so good.
Toby, is that where Dr.
Yeah,
Dr.
it's
Dinosaur? It's Dr.
No.
Dinosaur.
Dr. Dinosaur was the free comic book day one shot
No,
Volume 3 is with...
he's introduced in one of the volumes, though, right?
No, his first appearance is in the one shot.
No, but I mean, like, he's in one of the volumes, right?
Oh, yeah, he shows up, but that's...
Is that volume 4?
That's a Savage Sword of Dr. Dinosaur. That's like volume 5 or 6.
Oh, well, guess I don't know anything about
volume 3 is when Atomic Robo teams up with Carl Sagan to fight Cthulhu.
Okay. That's cool. I do remember that one.
Yeah. Good times.
It's been a long time since I read Atomic Robo.
So I am also going to pitch something that is a webcomic.
Do it.
Although it is a completed webcomic.
Do it.
It's one I pitched before. It's Rice Boy by Evan Dom.
Oh, yeah.
This is a really cool, kind of surreal, very colorful story. And it starts out with these two characters named the One Electronic and Calabash. And they've been rendered immortal by God. And God basically said, you will live forever until you find like my next herald, basically, like the second coming of Jesus, who's going to have like all these divine revelations. And so your job is to find this person and guide them. And they've been alive for like 3,000 years. And they keep thinking like, oh, we found it this time. Only it's not the right person. And like horrible shit happens because of that, like terrible holy wars and false revelations and all this bad crap. And the story starts with them meeting up and the One Electronic going, I think I found the right guy this time. And Calabash is like, I'm done. I'm not going to do it anymore. And so the One Electronic is like, okay, fine. I'm going to go find him myself. And he goes in and he finds this guy named Rice Boy, who's this little like stick figure cartoon who looks like a grain of rice. And he says, Rice Boy, you're the Messiah. And Rice Boy's like, nah, I don't think so. And Electronic's like, well, fuck. And so he goes off and Rice Boy's like, well, maybe. I think I'm just going to go out and have an adventure and maybe I'll find out if I'm actually this thing. And he goes on this quest basically to find out if he's the Messiah or not. And like all this crazy shit happens and he goes on this long journey and he makes friends and he makes enemies and shit. Like the One Electronic and Calabash, like it follows their stories and they get involved in what's going on. And it's super cool and a lot of fun. And you can read the whole thing for free online at riceboy.com.
Sweet. You read the weirdest shit. No, I'm just kidding.
So good. One of these days I'm going to pick up the print edition, but it's like $35 and it's just on that threshold that it's like, I want to get this, but I don't want to spend quite that much money right now.
Not badly enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that with a lot of stuff.
One day though.
Yeah.
And Evan Dom is a super cool guy and I see him at cons around here because he lives in Portland.
Cool. Very cool.
And so if you're in the Northwest and you go to a comic book convention and he's there, say hi to him because he's a nice guy.
Bring him a sandwich.
He is awfully thin.
Well, we just say bring everyone a sandwich, but I mean,
yeah.
If you're going to go meet a creator, you might as well give them a sandwich while you're meeting them.
Totes.
Who doesn't need a sandwich?
So Chard, what did you bring?
So I brought an image book. Actually, it was funny is I held off on recommending this because a few weeks ago I discussed this on Out of the Fridge. So I wanted to kind of wait until I could reread it again, and I just talked about it, so I don't want to talk about it. But that episode of Out of the Fridge won't come out for like another month, so it's like this weird, like we're 2 months behind the release schedule thing. So when this comes out, we won't have discussed it on Out of the Fridge, even though that's already happened yet, and so I've already read it and discussed it for that. So,
in the future past.
In the future past, I read it on the recommendation of, I don't remember, I think it was Allison on Out of the Fridge picked this book. And it is called Ravine. Yeah, everyone's shaking their head because they haven't heard of it. This is Ron Mars, who wrote Witchblade and the Magdalena and all this good stuff for
Green
Top
Lantern.
Cow. He also wrote a significant portion of the Kyle Rayner Green Lantern stuff. And Steven the Sejic?
Stepan Sejic, I believe, and I'm just guessing.
The new Rat Queens artist, or the soon-to-be new Rat Queens
Did he really
artist.
get announced as the new Rat Kings
Yeah.
artist?
Yeah, that happened like a month ago.
Oh, I
That's
haven't
why
been
we
paying
read this book.
attention.
Yeah, so
That's
it's awesome.
I love
so,
his. I follow his art blog.
yeah, so
Same.
this is his...
He writes some really funny stuff.
yeah, so this is
And
his...
some really dirty stuff.
He drew and colored this whole book, digitally colored. It's very like... So I guess on the back of the book it says like a fantasy in the style of Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, which I think is actually the worst description for this book you could ever possibly give, because it is not at all like either of those things.
Isn't that exactly the same as, what was it, Sovereign?
Yeah, like I hate that when they did, because they're the two biggest, most well-known fantasy things. They're like willing to throw that shit on everything. To me, this is like an epic fantasy in the style of RPGs and JRPGs with art that looks like Magic the Gathering cards. Modern Magic the Gathering card art. Like, that's what I would put on the back. But I understand that
Magic the Gathering art.
I would not read a book if it
Herloon,
looked like
Minotaur, or better.
Yeah. If it looked like, oh my god, there's so much early Magic the Gathering art that I would not read a book if it looked like. But it looks like modern Magic the Gathering art, or like modern D&D book, like that kind of like hyper digital,
right?
Like everything's got halo lighting effects and explosions, and the lightning bolts that are coming out of people's fingers are like really bright and
super bloomed.
Yeah, and I think it looks awesome. It's a little static in some parts, and I would say that the first trade is pretty dense because it has to set up the world. But I'm recommending the first two trades, which is everything that's out. It's not completed yet. And it is essentially kind of this fantasy world, sort of Skyrim inspired. It reminds me a lot of
Lord of the Rings? Or
no.
Game of Thrones?
Nope. Fire Emblem. So there's like dragon riders, and there's guys that can turn into dragons. There's mages that shoot. Have you read this?
No, but
okay.
I just said that I follow his art feed.
Yeah,
and he posts stuff for this all the time. So I'm like, yeah, this sounds really familiar. Like, sounds awesome. I could really get into it. Oh, right, I've been looking at the art.
Yeah,
for like the last year.
So it's cool. It's cool stuff. And like, there's a lady that's like, she's Fate or whatever, and she has like this cool hood over her face. And then there's another lady with like a bunch of tentacle snake arms. And there's dragon riders. The main character, she's a like female dragon rider who's raised in this like kind of nunnery of dragon riders, and everyone in the world thinks they're lesbians because there's a bunch of women living together. That's a joke that gets brought up more than once.
See, what upsets me about your 52 weeks of Image is if we don't pick a book, you're not going to pitch it again for like a year.
I don't bring it back.
And you keep pitching these really cool books that we don't necessarily
I'll bring
pick.
it back eventually. I just want to get through the 52 weeks of Image first. Like, when the third volume of this comes out, I'm sure I'll bring it back.
Plus, keep in mind that some of us scoop up the Image books, too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And, anyway, it's just like cool. There's dragon riders. There's guys that can turn into dragons, and then there are like dragon men, like in Skyrim. What are they called? The dragon guy, the lizard guys,
Argonians.
Yeah, they look like that. And there's just like a lot of cool magic stuff going on. There are these kind of ancient warriors that died in this specific event that is the prologue, kind of like Lord of the Rings, where it's like the prologue is like many years ago, and all who've lived then have forgotten what happened. And so these two warriors die in this like really epic way in the very beginning of the book, and then they are kind of incarnated in these magic weapons that the two main characters have. And so they have like imaginary best friends that are the ancient old-timey warrior guys, and so they have like superpowers. They're like more than your average fantasy fighter, where like one can kind of like summon the other woman, and then they just like fight together, and the other guy goes like Super Saiyan and like blows up a whole bunch of shit. And it's really cool, and I really like it, and I was not expecting to like it at all. And then I read it, and I was like, that was cool. So I want to know what you guys think about it. I think it's cool. And I think that it's an interesting thing to talk about because Ron Mars sometimes gets criticized for the way he writes female characters.
I can see that.
So, one of the main characters is a female warrior, and she's really interesting, and I think worth talking about and worth reading this book. So, everyone should go check it out. Ravine.
Awesome sauce.
Yeah.
Yep.
Kayleigh, what do you want to read?
I'm gonna go with Ravine.
I'll go with Ravine.
I'm gonna vote for Silver Surfer.
Sweet. Rice Boy.
Nice.
I think I vote for it every time we bring it because I'm like, that sounds like something that's up my alley, and then I never read it.
I'm not sure if this is the second time I pitched it or the third.
I think it's the third because I think more than once, either that or we've talked about it off air.
Maybe
because
we have.
More than once I've thought I should read that and then don't read it. So
If you had an application that you could load to remind you to read it.
I don't think I need that. Maybe. We'll see.
All right, so next week, Ravine.
Ravine. Image Comics, 2 trades.
Was
Nice.
that part of the Humble Bundle?
No. I don't believe so. The newest volume came out in this year, last year, 2014. So it's still ongoing. It just feels like it's not as mainstream as some of that other stuff that was in the Image Humble Bundles. And it was this most recent Image Humble bundle was firsts.
Oh, right.
So it was like the first volumes of a lot of stuff.
Astounding to me how prolific Sedgwick is.
Yeah.
Like every month it seems like I find out he's working on another book.
He does like 30 covers a month too.
He just must work phenomenally
Well, I've
quickly.
gotten the impression from what he posts on his blog and stuff that he's got his rhythm down pretty strong. Like, he clearly, like, I mean, because all the, like, jokey stuff he tends to put up are, like, speed sketches to warm himself up.
All the Rackling stuff we've seen from him so far is all speed sketches.
Yeah.
But, like, he does Death Vigil, which is his own, and I think it's like Sunstone or something like that.
Yeah.
That is also his own. And he started working on Rat Queens, and he's obviously doing this.
Yeah.
And, like, I know he's got to be working on at least one other thing. I can't remember what
Plus,
it
he does
is.
a bunch of covers.
Yeah.
Like...
Although I do notice that I think he does covers in waves. So, like, you'll see, like, 5 in a month, and then I don't think you'll see him for a couple months.
Dude's a machine.
Yeah.
So it may just be that, like, depending on what the release schedule is for all these things, he's basically only working on what would be a couple of books, but more spattered out or something.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, he could take, like, a week and do a bunch of covers and then, like, or, you know, some covers, and then those covers don't come out for, like, a few months.
Right.
You never really know. Because I always wonder how Scotty Young's getting through all the stuff he's getting through, too. But
Yeah, that guy posts crap. I follow his.
Yeah.
I follow a bunch of artists online. Yeah,
Yeah.
he posts stuff constantly. He's just
I
like,
love his warm-up sketches. They're
Here's
crazy.
my 5 variants for this month.
Yeah.
I'm like,
So-
oh, cute baby Deadpool.
There's some artists that are just, they're fast,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And there are other artists that are covetous of other artists' speed, where they're like, it takes me 60 days to draw a 30-page book.
I can't remember where I read this, but I read that, like, for instance, like Humberto Ramos, actually, one of the reasons that he got, like, now I think he's kind of well respected and he's got this style that people kind of jive with, but he kind of showed up out of nowhere, and I had heard at one point that the reason is because he did fill-in and he was so fast, like, people, like, whatever it was about his own style, he just really synced with it, and so, like, they'd be like, okay, Humberto, we've got, like, a month, and we need a Spider-Man fill, he's like, okay.
Yeah.
Being fast and consistent is really, like, that's 90% of what you need for a career. Like, you can make a career out of just being able to get shit done quickly and on time.
Yeah.
Like, we need this right now. Like, okay, it's done.
And flip side of that, you've got, like, John Cassaday, who takes, like,
Fucking
a year
forever.
to draw a single issue. And, like, it's not that it looks bad. It looks great. But it's, like, you know.
Well, you got to wonder
different
how much of that
artists-
is him him working on it, or versus him not having the focus to, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, oh, sure.
I
But,
always wonder about that stuff.
yeah. It's just, there are definitely different artists out there. And so, let's talk about... How do you say it?
I say Stepan Sedgwick.
Okay.
Romanian, yeah.
I tried to
something
Czech.
like
He's
that.
Czech, I
Czech.
think.
Czech.
I tried to listen to a podcast interview with him and try to hear how he says it, but he says it so fast and he has a heavy accent that it's hard to pick up how he says his name. So, for me anyway. But yeah, so Ravine.
Well, maybe if we say it enough times, one time we'll say it right and it will summon him here. And
yeah,
then we'll know.
Well, I think we have to say it 3 times to summon him.
That's never going to happen.
Okay.
Beetlejuice.
I think that's how that works. Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we will catch you next week. Send in listener questions.
Good night. Wait, did we have one?
We had one that was please talk about the art in this
okay.
issue, which we started with.
All right, sorry, never mind.
Hiroja, who's a big fan of the show, and also Out of the Fridge sent that in. So,
And also a Patreon supporter.
yes.
And thank you to
so much.
all our Patreon supporters.
Yes. And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Me from the Gutters. I hope our recommendations have inspired you to go out and find some new comics you'll enjoy. Join us next time for a discussion of our selected title, but like every week, we encourage you to read all of the recommended books. In the meantime, please leave us an iTunes review. It really does help new listeners find the show. You can also like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at ViewFRTHGutters. Feel free to email us at contact@viewfromthegutters.com. Please send us any questions, comments, or recommendations you might have. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as we post new videos every week. And thanks again for listening. And as always, keep reading.